Okay, so now we're starting this new thing and we're gonna show you a little bit behind the scenes of how we create the items from start all the way from the beginning to finish. We strive to do everything in-house when it comes to breads, cheeses, and anything else that we make. Some of the items, of course, we order from outside. But today I'm gonna show you how we make our Bao Buns, and especially our Smoked Oyster Mushroom Bao Buns, and what takes to make those guys, what goes into it. So first, we're gonna start with making the buns themselves. It's a bit of a process, but we make it a large scale for all the Beyond Sushis. We're gonna start with making the dough. The dough has the longest time, the preparation and the rest and the fermentation and the rise and the double rise that we have on it, and then the steaming part. And in the meantime, while we have that working, we're gonna work on everything else that goes into the Bao Bun. That way we're efficient, just like our restaurants. So we're gonna start with yeast. We have 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, and we're gonna put that inside over here. And the yeast, we're gonna feed it. First of all, we're gonna get it, it's dry yeast, dry instant yeast. So we're gonna get it nice and wet and dissolve the whole thing. And I'm using my hands, it's okay. This is for me, not for anybody else. When you make it at home, you can do that as well. We're gonna dissolve the yeast. The yeast dissolving inside is gonna start working basically. We use 1 cup of lukewarm water. I'm gonna put some sugar inside, and that's gonna feed the yeast. And we're gonna start with all our wet ingredients. The sugar will give the yeast all the food it needs to start bubbling and getting and creating all this texture that will affect our dough at the end and create all those bubbles inside and keep it nice and airy. Once we dissolve the sugar in there, we're gonna add our milk into it. Then we're gonna put it on the side and let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes while we mix our dry ingredients and make our dough. Once we have this ready, we're gonna go with our dry ingredients. For our dry ingredients, very, very simple. We have 4¼ cups of flour. That'll go in here. I didn't say the milk amount is a 1/2 cup that we added in there. On top of that, we have baking powder, 1 teaspoon, okay? And we got a pinch of baking soda in there as well. And then we're gonna use a pinch of salt. Now we don't put the salt with the yeast right away because it's gonna basically kill the yeast. So we don't wanna do that. And we're gonna mix all these ingredients. So the baking soda, baking powder, and our all-purpose flour goes all together. And unfortunately, all you gluten-free people, I'm sorry, this is not gluten-free, okay? We're gonna mix it in. Maybe one day I'll come up with a recipe that is gluten-free, but for now, we're just doing regular Bao Buns. We're gonna mix it in, and everything is mixed in. And now we're gonna wait for 5, 10 minutes, just for the yeast to start working and get bubbling. And then we're gonna mix them together and create our dough. What milk did we use, by the way? What do you think? Oat milk, okay? I love oat milk, best milk out there. Milk, right? Once that the yeast started working, it's all bubbled up, we're gonna mix the wet with the dry. So always, any baking recipe, dry on one side, wet on the other side, and we're gonna mix it in. I'm making a well in the middle of the flour, okay? And that goes inside. And I'm gonna use my hand to get this dough nice and flaky, and then we'll form a nice dough ball. Okay, all of that is mixing slowly, slowly. I like getting everything together bits by bits. And then once we have something that resembles this broken dough, we start putting muscle into it. The way I do it, I just move it to the table and work on it on the table. Looks like a crumbly dough right now. We're gonna use our muscles now. And then when you ask why I don't go to the gym, there you go. This is why. When you do that for thousands, different story. I'm lying. I have machines that do that. But today, we're gonna do the process so you can learn how to make it at home. Okay? We're gonna fold it in. And we wanna, the point of folding all this together is to get the yeast working. You agitate the yeast and the flour and the gluten inside the flour so it would start working. And we're stretching basically that gluten as much as we can. So we push, fold, push, fold, push, fold, push, fold, push, fold, push. I'm having fun with myself. What we want to have is a silky dough ball at the end. So this is going to take a second. Form the bowl. We don't want to overwork this dough. This dough will proof twice. So we're gonna knead it again after it proofs. We use a proofer. I'll show you how I put it in the proofer, what temperature. You don't have a proofer at home? No big deal. You just put it above your stove or in a warm position where it's humid, and that will do the work. It might take a little bit longer, but we're gonna put it in the proofer. So our proofer is ready. It's steaming up. It's at 85 degrees. Again, you don't have a proofer at home. We're gonna put this for about 45 minutes in our proofer. At home over the stove, you can wait an hour, okay? Steaming proofer, put it inside, nice and hot, nice and warm. That warm environment is gonna make the yeast start working and really bubbling up. And that's what's gonna give us all the airiness, the cloud feeling that we get in our Bao Buns. Hey, okay, so by now I'm all full of flour because we're doing a big batch of these guys. But the handmade one, you saw it before, it doubled in size. What we're gonna do is we're gonna knead it up a little bit, and after we knead it up, we're gonna portion it, 50 grams a piece, roll it out, lay it out, let it rise again before we steam it in our steamer. And I'll show you a home steamer so you can see how you do it, okay? I'll take it out, nice and soft still. We're gonna knead it for a second just to get a silky smooth dough, okay? Gently, we don't wanna overwork our gluten again so we can work with it. Now, after we did that, the way I like to portion it is cut it until we get to 50 grams. So I'm gonna cut it in half first, okay? Then cut it again, then cut it again, then cut it again. 50, beautiful. Okay, and I'm gonna go through this whole process and keep cutting them to 50. But I cut these two so I can show you. We're gonna put our hands together. And my right hand is always better than my left. Okay, and I'm gonna keep on rolling it until we get a nice little bowl. The same thing on this one. And if you do enough, don't put flour because the point that it sticks to the table helps a lot to create those balls nice and perfect, right? We do it in the palm so it's not laid on it, but it's halfway there. We leave a little bit of space. Now that we have this, that's where I use a little bit of flour. I'm gonna put a little bit of flour on the top, just so it creates a separation afterwards when we roll it. And we're gonna flour and we're gonna flatten it up a little bit, but just keep the middle as the flat part. But we leave those two thick sides of it. You don't need Botox over here. And then we're gonna fold this and let it rise. A lot of places will brush a little bit of oil, brush a little bit of something that would not make it stick. But since we've done this dough this way, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger so we can fill it up. The more filling, the better inside, the better flavor we have. Since we did this dough this way, it's not gonna stick together. Once it's cooked, once we steam it up, we'll be able to open it up once we let it chill a little bit. And then we're gonna lay all of these on a sheet pan and let them rise again. Okay, the next step in the Bao Buns, after we portioned it, rolled it out, folded it over, we're gonna put it in our bamboo steamer. That's what you're gonna do at home. And we put on the bamboo steamer on the bottom, we cut some wax paper. We made a few holes on the bottom, just made it in triangles, cut the holes. So all the steam, when we steam it later on, is gonna cook the buns. Because these buns are cooked with steam, not in the oven, right? So we're gonna place in here probably 4 or 5 pieces all together. So we have space. And of course you can stack this at home and do a few stacks. I'm just gonna do one right now. So I'll show you the process. And these 5 are gonna sit in the proofer for another 30 minutes. You leave it outside, just like we said before. It will double in size, and then we're gonna steam it. We get it in commercial, but you can always get this at the store. And what they will do at the store, they'll cut these pieces off, have that. It's nicer to have the full thing. The bottom part, if you cut it off and clean it up, you can use in pastas and other things and so on. We only use the leaf part or this scooping part for our bao bun. It's softer, it's less chewy. Bundles like these are used a lot of time with cast iron. You've seen it before, I'm sure, on the internet, Instagram, whatever. Press it down, salt, pepper, they press it down and cook it over time and basically use it as a steak. This part of the mushroom is going to be a lot chewier than this part. This is where we want to be. We don't want to be in the chewy part, putting in the bao buns. It still gives us texture, but it's not to a point that you can't even chew it in. What we're going to do is saute them, clean them up, take out the leaves, and then after we saute them, we're going to smoke them in our smoker and mix them with the sauce, and then we're going to use them in the bao buns, and I'll show you in the restaurant how we put it together. Ready? Okay. Use the right tools for everything that you do. A paring knife would work best so you don't cut yourself. A chef knife is too big for that. What we're going to work on is getting, we just want the leaflets, right? We just want to leave the part, this floral part that comes off. These are softer. This part, like I said, you can use afterwards. Cut the bottom off, chop it up, use it in pasta or whatever, not so you don't waste, because you're paying for every part of this mushroom, right? And then we go from there, chop it up, use it in your bolognese sauce, in your mushroom sauce, whatever it is, in the filling that you're doing, whatever it is, you throw it afterwards in. Now these leaves, I try to keep them as whole as possible, and all we're gonna do to them is take a little bit of fat, butter, if they're too big, I'm gonna cut them so they fit in our bao buns. All we're gonna do to them is saute them really quick, and after we saute them, the rest is gonna be done in the smoker. At low temp, we're putting in all that flavor with hickory wood, and I'll show you how it's done later. I always use very thick pan, distributes the heat a lot more even throughout our pan, and that's what I saute. I use butter, BioLite for that matter. Great stuff. I think it's the best plant-based butter that we have. Nice and clean label. And we're gonna wait for the butter to get nice and hot. What we wanna do is have it at very high heat so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. You wanna have a seasoned pan as much as possible. And as soon as we're gonna put it in, it's gonna sizzle. It's not gonna stick. We're gonna add a little bit of salt. That salt is gonna draw out all the moisture out of our mushrooms and also create a caramelization on the outside of the mushrooms that we wanna get nice browning on the outside. Color is flavor. Remember that, color is flavor. Once we get that done, we're gonna pile it all up in a container, and I'll show you how we use our smoker, okay? And we're gonna smoke those for a little bit, not too long so they don't get too much smoke flavor, but that's gonna enhance the earthiness of the mushroom, the meatiness of it, and we are able to introduce a new flavor into our bao buns, not just the plain mushrooms. Now that our butter is hot, we're gonna make sure that we add on our mushrooms. And we're gonna keep cooking at the highest heat. So we don't wanna turn the heat down, fire all the way up so we can get color. Now, that is gonna prevent from the mushrooms stewing and releasing all their moisture. So it will lock up the moisture inside because it's searing on the outside and not stewing inside. A lot of times when you cook mushrooms, all the water is coming out of it. We want to get caramelization. That moisture is going to stop that caramelization. Fire all the way up and you just keep on cooking. Okay? We're putting flour. We're already getting that caramelization on the outside. We're not letting it ooze out all its liquid. We're just gonna flip these guys. But this is nothing. We wanna get a nice color on the outside. That's where the flavor comes in. Now's the time that I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. Salt is gonna create some of the caramelization. It's necessary. And we spray that snowy salt on top, all over. Dry pan, nothing. We're just taking a little bit of the butter in the beginning just to give that. You're gonna get darker colors on this. It's totally fine. We wanna get that caramelization. In the meantime, I'm gonna get my smoker ready. Now this steak we use for smoking, everything that we smoke, we use over here. These guys are wood chips, hickory wood chips that we're gonna get ready. I'm gonna get my smoker set to 220 degrees so it's nice and hot. Throw a big one inside just to get the other ones out, just do that. Some color into this, and you can see that golden color. We want more. Give me more. Okay, we're gonna turn this guy on. I'm setting my smoker to 200 degrees. I just want it to be nice and hot. Start smoking right away. Over smoke those mushrooms, they come in like a weird, inedible flavor. So you can do it with a home smoker. We're gonna add them on to our container over here, nice and hot. Just gonna leave them over there. That's the container. We're gonna put it in the smoker now. Of course, when we do cases and cases and cases and cases of this thing, but for now, we're just gonna do this bunch. I'm gonna get a bowl. We're gonna make the marination. Put it on the side. As soon as it comes out of the smoker, while it's hot, I'm gonna put that marination on and get it ready for the oven right before we put it on our bao buns. Lots of steps. Get all the flavor in there. That's the key, okay? So I'm adding a little bit of salt on these guys before I put them into the smoker. I want it to ooze out a little bit more. And the smoker is gonna do a lot of the cooking. Come on over here so you can see our smoker is already starting to smoke. It's nothing compared to what it's gonna be later. So you got this smoke coming out, nice and beautiful. We're just gonna stick this guy over here. Once it's inside, we'll let it sit 25, 30 minutes max, because you don't want all that flavor of smoke to overpower everything that we're doing. And we're gonna balance it right now by making a sauce that will give it a kickback, and then use some acid at the restaurant with the bao buns so it's all balanced together, okay? So we have a cup of soy sauce in here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of sesame oil, okay? And sesame oil, extremely important. Then we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. That's all it is, okay? That's all we got in here. The acid part of this, normally if I would make this sauce, I would add some vinegar or some sort of citrus to really punch this up. But the acid part of this is gonna come in the bao buns. You always wanna think about what you're gonna put as the rest of the ingredients in your dish. If I put acid here and then I put my cucumbers I pickled and afterwards on top of that, we're gonna have too much acid. So I know that I'm adding pickled cucumbers and pickled onions to this to balance it out. So over here, all I'm doing is balancing out the sodium from your soy sauce. Even though I use low sodium soy sauce for this, and I balance it out with a little bit of the brown sugar and that sesame oil to enhance the flavor. And all I'm doing is mixing that. This is gonna be the marination for our mushrooms before we stick them in the oven. This marination will caramelize on the mushrooms and create this beautiful layer on the outside. That's what we're looking for. That's the meaty part, okay? And we're gonna try this thing. Just make sure. Perfect. You said smoky, right? A lot of smoke. But that's enough. It's been 20 minutes. I don't wanna over smoke it. Stuff is cooked already. And we're gonna finish it off in the oven afterwards anyhow. Nice and hot over here. When it's hot, it will absorb a lot more of the sauce. I'm gonna pour that over. It doesn't matter that it's extra. All of that will drip drop inside. And we'll get into our mushrooms. We're gonna sit this marination for at least 2 hours or so. Let the mushrooms soak up the marination, soak up the flavors from the soy sauce, the sesame oil, and the brown sugar. And all of that will get caramelized in the oven before it goes in our bao buns. They are still not steamed, they are in the oven. So we use the time that we waited for the bao buns to get all of this done. And that's how you cook in reality. You can't do one thing. Do the thing that takes the longest first, and then get everything else ready. So look what happened to these bao buns that we put in there. They have risen in our proofer. It will do the same if you put it on the stove. Like I said before, you can do it at home. This is a $5 construction over here that you can use and buy anywhere. And then you got a pan, water, nothing in there, just water, plain water. And we're gonna put it on it for about 8 to 10 minutes and let this thing cook. The steam from inside is what's gonna cook the dough. The dough is raw right now. We're gonna cook the dough and we'll have this cloud, beautiful bun that we can fill up with anything. And in our case, we're gonna do the mushrooms like we said before, okay? Okay, so come on over. Okay, so the steam has done its work, okay? It's not only that they blew up from our fermentation and our proofing, now it's already cooked. The dough is cooked inside. We're gonna turn this off. We're gonna close it back up take it off the stove. We don't want it to get wet, so as soon as I take it off, it's hot. Use towel, don't be like me. Okay, oh, we'll bring it over here. Ow, 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 ow. Okay, then we're gonna open this up. Let that steam out a little bit. And then while it's hot, I'm gonna open them and separate them. Okay, guys? Okay. So while it's hot, so it doesn't stick together later on, we got this beautiful pocket. Look at that, look at that. And it's all cooked inside. I have to check. If it doesn't, you go to put it back on top. But this is all cooked inside and we're ready to put it in. And it's soft like a cloud. We're just gonna let it cool off a little bit more and we'll build up our smoked oyster mushroom buns, okay? Look at that, beautiful stuff. Okay, so our mushrooms that we cooked earlier, we're gonna stick them in the oven, get them caramelized. I'm adding a little bit of our sauce on top of it, and that's gonna go inside the oven. Okay? We're gonna get it nice and caramelized, put it in 400 degrees for about 4 minutes. Gotta get that caramelization and all the sauce sticking to it. We're gonna have a nice sticky smoked mushroom afterwards. And we're gonna start, while that is cooking, we're gonna cut our cucumbers for pickling. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a quick pickle on our cucumbers with rice wine vinegar, some sesame oil, and some sesame, a little bit of salt. And we're gonna have our pickled red onions that will go on top as well, a little bit of dill. And we're gonna finish it off with miso glaze on top of everything. The pickling from the cucumber, the richness that we get out of the mushroom with the sauce and the caramelization and the smoking and the softness of the bun, everything comes together and we got this beautiful bao bun. So our sliced cucumbers, we cut them about 1/4 inch thick, okay? And I'm gonna cut a little bit more of those. It's always beautiful to have those. Now, you don't want to have them sit with the vinegar for too long. If they sit for too long, they become this tired cucumbers. So we pickle them about every hour or so when we prepare for our shift. And during the shift, we pickle and pickle and pickle and always add more, because then they stay crunchy and at the same time, they have this freshness to them. Add a little bit of salt. First of all, we start with salt. Any salad that you do ever, that's a tip for a lot of other ones. Any salad that you do, putting the salt first breaks a little bit of the vegetable and releases the natural waters out of the vegetables, or the natural hydration out of the vegetable. Always start with the salt when you're dressing a salad. Never put the oil first, the fat first, before you do the salt. Once you do that, the salt never reaches the vegetable itself. It never opens up all those natural flavors that you have in there. Salt first. Next, we have our sesame oil, and that's part of the dress. After that, we have a rice wine vinegar that we blend with a little bit of brown sugar to balance it out. We're gonna mix that up, and we're gonna top it off a little bit of white sesame, black sesame at the same time. And we're gonna let that sit. We're gonna mix that as well. Never wanna cut this too thin or put too much vinegar and hold for so long. If it doesn't snap like this, that means that it's not good. We want it to snap. We want it to stay, have the freshness, not break down to a point that it's not crisp anymore. Any salad or any thing that you do with vinegar, with the onions, my advice is, before you start working with them, have them sitting in a bowl with a little bit of acid and a little bit of salt. Transforms the whole experience, okay? And all we want to do is get nice 1/8 of an inch thick strips of onion, okay? And that should do the trick. We have more than enough. And we're gonna pickle those as well. In this case, we're only gonna do salt and a little bit of vinegar. Right on the board, mix this up, making sure that everything is nice and salty, okay? And after that, we'll go in the bowl. After we got everything nice and salted, a little bit of vinegar. And again, not a little bit, a lot of it. And again, you let it sit. In about a minute, 2 minutes at best, this is ready to go. So you don't want to over pickle those vegetables. You still want to have the brightness of the freshness of the vegetables. Cucumber, onions, and we're ready to go. Nice and hot buns, okay? We're gonna open them up. They want to close. They don't want to stay open. They always want to close. And now this is caramelized, and we're gonna take this mushroom. This is our base, okay? This is in this case our protein, okay? And we do this with our fried chicken as well. And we're gonna fill up nice and full. That's where the flavor comes from. We worked really hard on those mushrooms. Got them nice and smoked. Now it's time to build this dish up. Our pickled cucumbers. And we want to have a nice bite of this. Those mushrooms are cooked, so they're gonna be nice and meaty, but you want to have a bite, you want to have crunch, you want to have something that is gonna balance it off. And we got this nice amount of cucumbers. Our pickled onion, fresh, made a second ago. And that will go on top. And that will go on top. And we're not shy because this is pickled. You're not gonna feel like you're eating a raw onion. This is basically dressing it up. We're not shy on the amounts that we put in there. I even like give it a little bit of that vinegar just to balance it out. Okay? And then and of course I have my Jewish side of it. There we go. A little bit of dill. And we're gonna top this off. Some more sesame seeds. And then we got our miso glaze that goes on top of everything. And this is the sauce of the marination plus some miso that we add on to it. Finishing it off with our peanuts, okay, right here. You can't forget those. You get the crunch from there. And there we go. Oyster mushroom, smoked oyster mushroom bao buns from scratch with our buns from scratch, smoking the mushrooms. We got our onions, cucumbers, dill, peanuts, and a miso glaze. Can't get better than that.